The music is still in the air when something goes wrong. Not loudly. Not in a way most people notice at first. Dean Martin is standing under the lights, relaxed, steady, singing the way he always does. His voice fills the room with ease, the kind that makes people forget how carefully everything here is controlled. Tables are full. Drinks are moving. The night is working the way it is supposed to. Then Dean sees it. It is not center stage. It is not dramatic. It is a small moment near the edge of the room where attention is not meant to linger, a figure standing too stiff, a posture that does not match the music, a look that carries fear instead of enjoyment. Dean keeps singing, but something in his expression changes. Not panic, awareness. The room has rules and everyone in it knows them. Powerful men sit where they can be seen without being stared at. Staff move quickly and quietly. Performers perform. No one interrupts the rhythm once it starts. What is happening near the stage is not chaos. It is pressure, controlled, intentional, the kind that does not raise voices because it does not need to. Dean notices a hand placed where it does not belong, a smile that is not kind, a body language that says resistance will only make things worse. He does not know every detail, but he knows enough. He has seen this before, even if never from this angle. The music keeps going, but the meaning of it drains out of the room. He sings another line, smooth and practiced. The audience listens, unaware that something fragile is breaking nearby. The band watches him closely now. They feel the shift before they understand it. The tempo stays the same, but the air grows heavy. A few people sense discomfort without knowing why. Others laugh, distracted by their drinks, trusting the night to protect them from anything real. Dean's eyes move again carefully. He is not searching for approval. He is measuring risk. He understands exactly where he is and who is watching. This is not a place where interruptions are forgiven. This is not a stage you abandon without consequence. Walking away is not neutral. It is a statement, whether you intend one or not. The pressure near the stage tightens. It always does. Power likes to see how far it can go before someone looks away. The person caught in it does not speak. They cannot. Speaking would only change the shape of the damage, not the outcome. Dean feels something familiar rise in his chest. Not anger, something colder, something steadier. He finishes the phrase he is singing, but he does not lean into the next one. The pause is small at first, barely noticeable. A breath held a fraction too long. The band hesitates, unsure whether to follow or wait. This is where the night could still correct itself. This is where Dean could pretend he saw nothing and let the song carry him forward. Instead, he stops. The sound drops away so cleanly it feels unnatural. No trailing note, no flourish, just silence. The microphone stands alone in front of him. The room does not react right away because rooms like this are trained to keep going. People look at each other, confused, waiting for a cue that does not come. Dean does not speak. He does not gesture. He steps back from the microphone as if it no longer belongs to him. The band freezes. The silence stretches, long enough to become uncomfortable, long enough for everyone to realize this is not part of the show. Eyes shift toward the tables that usually control how nights end. Power does not like silence because silence forces attention. Whatever was happening near the stage stops, not out of mercy, but out of uncertainty. The room is holding its breath. Dean stands still for a moment, his face calm, unreadable. He looks out over the crowd, not searching for applause, not asking permission. Then he turns. He walks away from the center of the stage without hurry. Each step feels heavier than the last, not because he doubts himself, but because he knows exactly what this costs. No announcement follows him. No explanation smooths the moment over. The audience does not know whether to clap, to laugh, or to stay quiet. By the time Dean disappears from view, the night has changed shape. The show is no longer the most important thing in the room. Something else has taken its place, something unfinished, and everyone senses it. The question is no longer why he stopped singing. The question is what he saw that made him decide he could not stay. Vegas did not run on music. Music was only the curtain. Behind it, the real engine was power, and power loved the dark because it could see everything from there. In that era, a showroom could look warm and glamorous, but it was built on quiet agreements. People smiled, people clapped, people drank, and everyone acted like the night belonged to laughter. The truth was simpler. The night belonged to whoever could end it. That is why Dean's silence landed like a weight. Not because he was famous, but because he understood the rules so well that breaking them meant something. In a place like this, you did not stop the machine once it started. A singer sang. A band played. Staff moved like shadows. Managers smoothed problems before they became visible. The audience came to forget their own lives, and the room made sure they did. Silence did the opposite. Silence made people look. In those rooms, power did not always announce itself with loud voices or threats. It lived in small gestures. A table that never waited. A man who did not stand when someone important entered. A glance that made other men move. The strongest pressure was often the quietest, because quiet meant confidence. If you were used to being obeyed, you did not need to demand it. You only needed to remind people what happened to those who refused. Hollywood and Vegas shared that same language. People think of the Rat Pack era as jokes, tuxedos, and swagger. That was the public version. The private version was a constant negotiation. Who gets protected? Who gets used? Who gets forgiven? Who gets erased? Everybody wanted something, and the system was designed to make sure someone always paid for it, even if the bill never appeared on a table. Stars were not outside the system. They were inside it, just higher up. Dean could fill a room and make the whole place feel lighter, but he still knew there were lines he was expected not to cross. A contract could be generous and still be a leash. A handshake could be friendly and still be a warning. If the wrong man lost face, the punishment did not have to happen in public. It could happen later, quietly, in a way that was impossible to prove. That is why most people stayed silent. Not because they lacked character, but because they knew what silence bought them. Silence bought them tomorrow. It bought them another booking, another chance, another paycheck. Even good people learned to look away, because looking too closely was how you got pulled into trouble. And trouble did not always come as a fight. Sometimes it came as a phone that stopped ringing. Sometimes it came as a door that opened for everyone else. There was also pride. In those worlds, pride could trap you faster than fear. A man might tell himself, "It is not my business," when what he meant was, "I cannot afford to make it my business." A woman might tell herself, "That is just how it is," when what she meant was, "I cannot stop it." The system trained people to accept small cruelties because small cruelties kept bigger ones hidden. If you could swallow discomfort, you could keep your place at the table. Dean had swallowed plenty over the years. He had watched people get cornered by their own dreams. He had seen talent treated like property. He had seen kindness punished because it made powerful men feel weak. He also knew how quickly admiration could turn into resentment. One wrong move and the same room that loved you would decide you were a problem. So when he walked away from that microphone, the danger was not only the men watching him. The danger was the whole structure that held the night together. He was forcing the room to acknowledge something it was designed to ignore. He was making everyone choose, even if they did not want to. And that is what made the moment feel so tense. It was not a scandal. It was not a spectacle. It was a crack in the illusion. The audience had come for a performance, but the room suddenly felt like a test of who mattered, a test of who could be harmed without consequence, a test of whether a legend could refuse to play along. The strangest part was this. Dean did not look angry when he stopped. He looked decided, as if he had reached a place inside himself where the rules no longer protected him, and breaking them was the only way to stay whole. The question hanging over that era was never whether power existed. The real question was, who would dare to make it visible? The person caught in the middle of that night was not meant to matter. That was the unspoken truth of rooms like this. They were there to keep the night moving, to stay pleasant, to stay quiet, and to disappear once the lights went down. Their name was not on the marquee. No one came to see them. If they did everything right, no one would remember them at all. They had learned that lesson early. You keep your head down. You do not challenge men who never explain themselves. You smile even when the smile costs you something. In places built on money and reputation, invisibility feels like safety. It is not dignity, but it is survival. That night, something broke that protection. It may have started with something small, a delayed response, a misunderstood look, a moment where they did not move fast enough or laugh at the right time. In rooms like this, small things can be used as invitations. Once attention lands on you, it does not let go easily, especially when the attention comes from people who are used to being obeyed. The pressure did not come with shouting. It came with closeness, with space being taken instead of given, with jokes that were not really jokes, with the kind of smiles that make your stomach tighten because you know they are not meant for kindness. Each second stretched longer than it should have, and the music did nothing to soften it. They understood what was happening even if no one said it out loud. This was not about a mistake anymore. This was about power reminding someone of their place, about showing that no one would step in, about proving that the room belonged to certain men and everyone else was only allowed to borrow it. They did not look around for help because they already knew how that usually ended. People avoided eye contact. People pretended not to notice. It was not cruelty as much as fear wearing a polite face. Everyone in that room had something to lose. Everyone had learned the cost of getting involved. The worst part was the waiting, waiting for it to be over, waiting for permission to leave, waiting for someone to decide they had made their point. The body learns to stay still in moments like that, even as the mind races. You count seconds. You think about how you will explain this to yourself later. You wonder which part of you will feel smaller afterward. Dean saw all of this without knowing every detail. He did not need to. He recognized the shape of it. He had been the young man once, trying to stay useful, trying to stay welcome, trying not to offend the wrong person. Fame had changed his position, but it had not erased his memory. The look on that person's face was not unfamiliar. It was the look of someone realizing they were alone in a crowded room. What they stood to lose was not dramatic in a way people like to tell stories about. There was no fortune on the line, no headline. What they stood to lose was quieter and more personal, their sense of safety, their belief that doing their job was enough, their hope that tonight would end like every other night without leaving a mark. If things went the wrong way, there would be consequences that no one would officially acknowledge. A complaint labeled as troublemaking, a shift quietly taken away, a reputation that followed them without explanation. In these worlds, you did not need to be fired to be erased. You just needed to become inconvenient. They tried to hold themselves together, to look neutral, to give nothing that could be used against them. That effort took everything they had. Fear has weight, and carrying it alone is exhausting. The music kept playing, but for them, time felt stalled, as if the night had narrowed to this single point of pressure. When Dean stopped singing, they did not understand it at first. Silence is confusing when you are already bracing for impact. It took a moment to realize the attention had shifted. that the rules were bending in a way they had never seen, that someone with power had noticed them not as a problem, but as a person. They did not feel saved. It was too early for that. What they felt was something more fragile, a pause, a break in the certainty that nothing would change. For the first time that night, the pressure loosened, not because the system had grown kind, but because it had grown unsure. That uncertainty was dangerous, but it was also rare. And for someone who had spent the night being reminded how replaceable they were, it meant one thing they had not expected to feel at all. It meant they were not invisible anymore. The room does not relax after Dean steps away. It tightens. Pressure does not disappear just because it has been noticed. It changes shape. It becomes quieter, sharper, more deliberate. The people who are used to controlling the night do not rush to fix what just happened. They wait. Waiting is how power measures its options. The silence stretches longer than anyone expected. A few nervous laughs rise and die quickly. No one is sure who is allowed to move. The band stays frozen, hands hovering where sound should be. The vulnerable person near the stage feels the shift immediately. Attention has moved, but it has not vanished. If anything, it has become more focused. This is the moment when the system usually corrects itself. A manager would step in. A joke would smooth the edges. Someone would take responsibility so the night could continue. But Dean has removed the easy path. By leaving without explanation, he has forced everyone to sit inside the discomfort he exposed. Eyes drift toward the tables that matter most. Those men do not speak to each other. They do not need to. A shared understanding passes between them. Being challenged in public is dangerous, not because it wounds pride, but because it invites others to imagine resistance. That cannot be allowed to spread. The pressure resumes, but now it is aimed in multiple directions. The person who had been cornered feels it again, only colder this time. There is no performance left to hide behind. They stand still, unsure whether moving will make things worse. They know enough to understand that attention, even protective attention, can carry its own risks. Backstage, word travels fast. People whisper questions they do not want answered out loud. Was this planned? Is he serious? Who will pay for this? The night is no longer about entertainment. It has become a test of boundaries, and tests always demand consequences. Dean feels it too, even as he puts distance between himself and the stage. He does not rush. Rushing would look like regret. He moves with the same calm he carried while singing, but the calm costs him more now. Every step away from the lights pulls him deeper into uncertainty. He knows there will be calls. He knows there will be explanations demanded, whether he offers them or not. The people who manage the room hesitate. Stopping him would create a scene they cannot control. Letting him go sends a message they do not like. Either way, the balance is broken. The audience senses it, even if they cannot name it. They sit in their seats, waiting for someone to tell them what comes next, and no one does. The cruelty of the moment is that it lingers. There is no clean resolution. No one steps forward to claim responsibility. The vulnerable person remains in place, caught between being seen and being punished for it. Power often prefers this kind of uncertainty. It exhausts people. It makes them long for the old order, even if the old order hurt them. Dean's decision hardens as the seconds pass. Whatever doubts flickered when he first stepped away have burned off. He understands now that there is no version of this where he returns to the microphone and pretends nothing happened. That door is closed. The system does not forgive hesitation, and neither does his conscience. The escalation is quiet but relentless. A message is sent without words. This will be remembered, not tonight perhaps, but later, in bookings reconsidered, in favors withheld, in warmth turning cool. The room begins to reorganize itself around that future. For the audience, the night feels strange, unfinished. They came for a voice that made things feel easy. Instead, they are left with silence and questions. Some feel irritated. Others feel uneasy. A few feel something closer to respect, though they might not admit it. The person who had been at risk finally feels the pressure ease, not because they are safe, but because the focus has shifted upward. They are no longer the lowest point in the room. That alone is a relief, even if it comes wrapped in fear. What makes this moment irreversible is not the act of walking away, but the refusal to return. Dean has crossed from discomfort into consequence. Whatever happens next will not be decided on stage. It will be decided in private, where power prefers to work. And as the room slowly stirs back to life, one truth settles in, heavy and unavoidable. This night will follow him. The question is not whether there will be a cost. The question is how much of himself he will have to give up to pay it. The moment Dean crosses the threshold away from the stage, the room changes in a way no one can undo. This is not defiance shouted out loud. It is something more unsettling. It is calm refusal. Power is used to noise, to arguments, to performances of strength. What it is not used to is being denied attention. Silence settles into the space he leaves behind. Not the kind that feels respectful, but the kind that feels exposed. The microphone stands alone, waiting for a voice that is not coming back. The band remains still, unsure who they are now meant to follow. Every second that passes without sound deepens the meaning of what has already happened. Dean does not look back. That matters. Looking back would suggest doubt. It would suggest a need for approval. Instead, his stillness becomes its own answer. The men who expected control feel something unfamiliar press against them. Uncertainty. They are being watched now, not as hosts of the night, but as participants in a moment they did not authorize. The vulnerable person near the stage feels the shift before anyone else does. The pressure that had wrapped around them loosens, not gently, but suddenly, like a grip released too fast. It leaves behind confusion instead of relief. They do not move. They do not celebrate. They understand instinctively that this kind of pause can turn dangerous without warning. The audience senses it too. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Glasses are lowered to tables without clinking. People lean forward not because they expect a show, but because they realize they are inside something real. This is no longer entertainment. It is a confrontation, quiet enough to feel private, public enough to matter. Dean continues walking, measured and unhurried. Each step away from the light strips the room of its certainty. He is not storming out. He is not proving anything. He is simply choosing not to participate anymore. That choice forces everyone else to confront why they are still sitting where they are. Backstage, people hold their breath. No one rushes to stop him. Stopping him would mean admitting something has gone wrong. And admitting that would mean acknowledging why it went wrong in the first place. The system hesitates because hesitation costs less than action, at least at first. For the men who believed the night belonged to them, this moment cuts deep. Control depends on rhythm, on the idea that everything will return to normal if you wait long enough. Dean has broken that rhythm. He has introduced a stillness they cannot command, and stillness makes power visible. The silence stretches until it becomes unbearable. Someone clears their throat. Someone shifts in their chair. Still, nothing fills the space Dean left behind. No replacement voice arrives. No announcement reframes the moment. The absence becomes the statement. This is the line being crossed, not with confrontation, but with composure. Dean does not argue with power. He does not expose it with words. He lets it sit under the lights without distraction. He understands that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to a system is stop feeding it. The vulnerable person finally moves slowly, carefully, as if testing whether the room will allow it. No one stops them. No one dares. Attention has climbed higher now. Whatever reckoning is coming will not land on them tonight. That alone is a shift that feels unreal. Dean reaches the edge of the room where applause usually waits. There is none. What follows him instead is something heavier: awareness. The knowledge that he has changed how this night will be remembered, even if no one ever speaks of it openly. For a brief moment, it seems possible that someone will call him back, that the microphone will be offered again, that a compromise will appear. Dean does not slow. He understands that returning would undo everything. The power of the moment lives entirely in its finality. When he disappears from view, the room exhales, but not in relief. It exhales in confusion. People look at one another, searching for guidance that does not exist. The rules they rely on have failed them, and no one has stepped forward to repair them. What Dean has done cannot be reframed as part of the act. It cannot be softened into charm or humor. It stands alone, quiet and undeniable. A choice made without permission. A boundary drawn without explanation. And in that stillness, one truth becomes clear to everyone present, whether they want to admit it or not. Power has just been challenged, not by force, but by restraint. And restraint, when it refuses to bend, is something even the strongest rooms do not know how to control. The cost does not arrive all at once. It never does. It comes quietly, spread out over days and weeks, in ways that are easy to deny if you want to. That is how systems protect themselves. They rarely strike openly. They make you question whether anything happened at all. At first, there is only silence, no immediate confrontation, no dramatic fallout. Dean goes home that night without being stopped, without being threatened, without being praised. On the surface, it looks like the night simply ended badly. That is what makes it unsettling. He knows better than to mistake calm for forgiveness. The calls begin later, not angry, not accusatory, concerned, curious. People ask if everything is all right, if he is feeling well, if something distracted him. The questions are framed gently, but the meaning underneath them is sharp. An explanation is expected. An apology would be welcome. A promise that it will not happen again would smooth things over. Dean listens. He always listens. He understands that these conversations are not really about what happened on stage. They are about restoring balance, about making sure everyone knows their place again. He answers carefully without giving the reassurance they want. He does not argue. He does not defend himself. That restraint, too, has a cost. Opportunities begin to feel less solid. A date that seemed certain is suddenly tentative. A friendly voice sounds more distant. Nothing is taken away outright. That would be too obvious. Instead, things soften and drift, just enough to remind him that access is conditional. Fame can feel powerful, but it is still permission-based. Privately, the weight settles in. Dean replays the moment in his mind, not with regret, but with a kind of quiet exhaustion. Standing firm is easier in the moment than it is afterward. Afterward, there is no adrenaline, only the knowledge that a line was crossed, and that crossing it changed how others will see you. He does not tell many people what really happened. Stories like this do not travel well. They get reshaped, minimized, turned into jokes or rumors. Keeping it close feels safer. But silence has its own consequences. It leaves him alone with the decision, alone with the understanding that doing the right thing does not always feel right afterward. There is also the cost he did not anticipate, a shift inside himself. Something about the night stays with him, heavier than the professional risks. He sees rooms differently now. He notices who is protected and who is exposed. He feels the distance between laughter and control more clearly. The illusion that charm can smooth everything over no longer holds. He is still Dean Martin to the world. The voice is still there. The ease still reads as confidence. But underneath it, something has hardened, not into bitterness, into awareness. Once you see how easily a person can be cornered in plain sight, it becomes harder to enjoy the comfort of looking away. The vulnerable person from that night does not become part of his public story. There is no reunion, no acknowledgement. That, too, is part of the cost. Doing something quietly means living without proof that it mattered. He has to accept that the impact may never come back to him in a way he can see. And yet, the absence of applause does not erase the meaning of the choice. It only makes the choice more honest. Dean understands that hero moments are usually loud and rewarding. This was neither. This was a moment that asked him to give something up without promising anything in return. There are nights after that when the stage feels different. Not hostile, just changed. He performs, he jokes, he sings, but a small part of him stays alert in a way it never did before. He knows now how quickly a room can turn, how fragile comfort really is. That knowledge is a burden, but it is also a boundary. The cost, in the end, is not the work he may have lost or the favor that cooled. It is the simplicity he cannot get back. Before that night, silence could feel harmless. After it, silence always carries a question. What am I allowing to happen by staying quiet? That question follows him, not loudly, not constantly, but persistently. It does not let him forget that character is not proven by what you survive, but by what you refuse to accept. And refusal, once chosen, leaves its mark long after the room has gone dark. The story does not end the way most people expect it to. There is no public reckoning, no headline that captures the weight of what happened. The night fades into memory the way most nights do, softened by time, reshaped by rumor, slowly absorbed into the long history of places where power once sat unquestioned. But the meaning of it does not disappear. It settles quietly, carried forward by the people who felt it. Those who were in the room remember the silence more than anything else. Not the song that was cut short, not the awkward confusion that followed, but the feeling that something real had interrupted the performance. For a brief moment, the room stopped pretending. And even though the system recovered, even though the lights came back on another night, that pause stayed with them. Silence, once used that way, is hard to forget. Dean never spoke publicly about it. He did not turn it into a story he could tell on late-night television. He did not use it to shape his image. In some ways, that choice mattered as much as the act itself. By leaving it unclaimed, he allowed the moment to remain what it was. Not a statement, not a lesson, but a decision made when it counted. Over time, people tried to explain it in simpler terms. Some said he was tired. Others said he was angry. A few said it was just one of those strange nights performers have. Those explanations were easier to live with than the truth. The truth was that he had seen something he could not ignore, and he had chosen not to look away. That kind of choice makes people uncomfortable, especially when it is made without asking for praise. What the night revealed about Dean Martin was not heroism in the traditional sense. He did not confront anyone. He did not fix the system. He did not change the world. What he did was smaller and harder to measure. He refused to lend his presence to something that violated his sense of who he was. He chose identity over convenience, even knowing the cost would be invisible and ongoing. That choice reshaped how some people understood him. Behind the charm and the ease, there was a man who had learned where his line was. Not a loud line, not a dramatic one, but a firm one. Once crossed, it could not be negotiated. That kind of character rarely announces itself. It shows up once when conditions are worst, and then it disappears back into ordinary life. The vulnerable person from that night did not become famous. Their life did not suddenly transform, but something subtle changed. They learned that the rules, while powerful, were not absolute, that even in rooms built to protect the strongest, there were moments when someone might step out of line for the sake of another. That knowledge matters more than people realize. It stays with you. It alters how you see yourself in the world. For Dean, the night became a quiet reference point. Not a memory he revisited often, but one that shaped his understanding of silence and responsibility. He knew now that staying quiet was never neutral, that absence could either protect harm or interrupt it. Once that realization settles in, it does not leave you. It becomes part of how you move through rooms, how you listen, how you decide when enough is enough. This is why the story has endured, even without proof or polish. It speaks to something deeper than celebrity. It speaks to the moment when a person understands that comfort and integrity cannot always coexist. That sometimes, the cost of staying whole is losing the ease that once defined you. Dean Martin is remembered for laughter, for music, for making life feel lighter. That is how most people knew him, and that image is not wrong. But this night adds another layer, one that does not erase the others. It reminds us that beneath the performance was a man capable of stillness, capable of refusal, capable of choosing not to be carried along by the current of power. In the end, the legacy of that night is not about who won or who lost. It is about what was revealed. That character is not always loud. That resistance does not always raise its voice. Sometimes, the most lasting statement a person can make is simply to stop, step away, and let silence speak for them. And long after the music faded, that silence continued to say exactly what it needed to say.